No need. Do not do that, Jackson heard, recognizing the voice of his wife's friend, Becky or Bex, as her friends called her. He had just returned home from playing golf on Saturday, a little earlier than he had intended. He looked out the open, sliding patio door to see his wife and her 3 friends lounging by the pool and sipping mimosas. Diana, his wife, was lying on a sun lounger with her back to the door. Bex was to her right. Redhead Steph was directly in front of Dee, and Cheryl was to her left lying on a towel by the pool. He stayed away so he couldn't be seen, so he could listen. Sorry, Bex, but that's all I can think about. I felt it, and I can't stop thinking about how it would feel. You all talk about it, his wife replied. Besides, I'll be careful so Jackson won't find out. I won't be like Candace. Candace is their sluttiest friend, telling the ladies endless stories of seduction and incredible sex. He will know. They always find out. You know what happened to me, and Candace is complete crap. I've been divorced for 3 years now, and I regret every stupid decision I made because of her. She became my death, and now she will become yours, Bex answered sadly. He heard his wife answer. It will be one time, and that's it. I need to know if size really matters, like Candace says. That's not true, if you must know, Cheryl added. Cheryl has been married almost as long as Jackson and Diana. In college, I had an affair with a guy, but after the initial passion wore off, it turned out that he was just another guy who didn't want anything else other than sex. Then I met Bert and realized that he could love me better than anyone else with the greatest dignity. A guy with a lot of dignity exists only because of his dignity. In fact, he is not interesting at all. She took a sip. It's just a sporting event, and that's all, damn it. No romance, nothing at all. Steph, who has never been married, added, I warned you when you wanted to join our bachelorette party, so that you never get attached to any guy you dance with. You may only want to dance, but they come to the club to have sex. The biggest problem you have is that you started an affair with this guy. You're dating him, whether you know it or not. I'm not dating him. We drink, dance, and have a little fun, Deepaw said. Until last evening, he told me that he has great dignity and wants to have sex with me. Until last night, I behaved well until he showed it to me. Now that I've held it in my hands, I want to know what it feels like. Very much. She smiled. I fly away just thinking about him. Beck sat down and leaned against Diana. Understand, sister, Candace doesn't get or have incredible sex every night. She sits at home like me and is lonely. I know this, and that is where you are heading. I would give anything for a man like Jackson. He is nice and friendly to everyone. He has a good business and is a wonderful father. She stood up and tied a towel around her waist. This is your funeral, but I want to say here and now that when Jackson throws you away, I will do everything in my power to make him mine. Dee looked up at her friend. You don't understand. I have to do this. Must. Just once. Bex looked sad. It won't happen just once and that's it. It doesn't happen like that. I know. I've been there. Listening to this conversation, Jackson was overcome with anger. His wife, with whom he has lived for more than 20 years, is about to have sex with some guy she met at a club. Bullshit, he thought. In a fit of anger, he pushed the screen aside, knocking it off the railing, and rushed towards the pool. Dee felt a hand grab her left arm and pull her up. She turned to face her husband. The rage in his eyes was noticeable to all the women. His right hand grabbed her wedding and engagement rings, and he pulled them off, her left hand. My rings, she cried. Well, you are no longer my wife, so today you can go have fun. In anger, he threw the rings over the roof onto the street in front of their house. Go have sex with your boyfriend with great dignity. He was shaking with anger and rage. I heard everything. I knew you weren't very good at bachelorette parties, but I couldn't believe you were in a relationship with some fucking loser from a bar. Dee fell onto the concrete a cring. Steph stood up first and tried to console Jackson. Cool down, Jackson. She really didn't do anything wrong. Nonsense, he answered. Fuck you all. You all knew what would happen when you started taking her to parties. Especially you, Steph. He pointed his index finger at her. Since you're all here, help this slut pack her things and get them out of my house. Now, Cheryl smiled. The smile she used to control her husband. Come on, you can't be serious. She gently put her hand on his chest and suddenly found herself staggering and falling backwards into the pool. Jackson, having pushed Cheryl into the pool, turned away. I'll be gone for an hour, and when I come back, I don't want her in my house. Guess what? Steph has a new roommate. Jackson went into the house and then came back through the door. Bex, I heard you too, and I'm looking forward to our dates. But know that I won't have sex with you until the divorce is final. These bitches won't be your friends anymore. Isn't that unacceptable to you? Bex stood up proudly. No, not at all. She couldn't help but smile. He was a real find. She was confident that she had learned from her past mistakes. A week later, Dee got her wish. At Friday's bachelorette party, Bex watched Dee greet her boyfriend. She knew him. He was one of those nasty guys who come to clubs to prey on married women. She knew that he had once been the roommate of the man who had seduced her many years ago. It was something she would always regret. She knew that tonight, Dee's life would change forever, just as her life had changed. She felt guilty for not trying to stop Dee, but she's known Dee since elementary school, and she knows that once Dee decides something, it's decided forever. She regretted not having photographed this seduction sooner. During the last couple of bachelorette parties, she had taken pictures with her phone to document her friend's behavior in the hopes of keeping her from making the same mistake she had made. To show Dee what she looks like in public. A married woman cheating on her husband. Now it appears she took these photos to take Dee's husband and make him hers. Maybe that's how it is, she thought. Dee didn't dance with her boyfriend tonight. She looked at her friends and said she'd see them later. With that, she greeted the man, and they turned and left the club. In his small, unkempt apartment, Dee felt butterflies in her stomach. In 21 years, this is the first man she has had other than Jackson. Undress me, he demanded. As she reached for his fly, her companion noticed that her wedding ring was missing. Put on the rings. I want to see them in your hand when you touch me. Dee replied, I cannot. Jackson took them when he kicked me out of the house last weekend. Why did he do this? Were you with someone else? She went on the defensive. No, he overheard my conversation with my friends about how I couldn't wait for us to have sex, so he snatched my rings and kicked me out. She saw that this man suddenly lost interest in her. Maybe Bex is right that he only wanted to have sex with her because she's married and the man is driven by his fetish. Don't you want to make love to me? He looked at her. She is attractive, but without a husband. If she feels good, he will never get rid of her. She doesn't interest him as a girl. Who needs a cheating wife? If I can get her so easily, then who can't? Damaged goods, he thought. Here's the thing. Tonight I'll give you what you want. You want him, and I know it. But after we have sex, you have to leave. I'm not interested in you hanging around here trying to be my girlfriend, and I'm not your boyfriend. I seduce married women because I don't need affection. With these words, he grinned. He took off his pants and threw them on the sofa. He unbuttoned his shirt and added it to his trousers. He wasn't as fit as Jackson, but she didn't care. She knew what she wanted. Dee knelt in front of him. After a few minutes, he pushed her away and led her to his bed. She began to take off her clothes as quickly as she could, and now she stood naked in front of him. He pushed her backwards onto the unmade bed. As it was? I know you liked it. He smiled at her, then went into the bathroom and closed the door. She felt sad, disappointed. Sure, it was big, but the experience reminded her of her first time. Disappointment is the best way to describe it. As she drove back to Steph's apartment, she noted that it had only been an hour since she left the club with him. If she had sex with Jackson, she would be lying in his arms in the afterglow of lovemaking. She could go back to the club and meet the girls. Feeling sad and lonely, with tears streaming down Dee's cheeks, she took an Uber back to Steph's empty apartment. Jackson spent a week preparing for his new life. Some people would call him cold, but that's how he dealt with problems. Locked problems in small boxes. A successful business allowed him to delegate work so he could focus on what he needed to do. He knew that Dee would be served at work on Monday. He was not vindictive in his proposed settlement. They had been together for over 20 years, and she had been a good wife and mother to their son, until she decided she deserved the slumber party time she already had every week. Ever since he installed the pool, the girls would lie around it every weekend and get sober. He didn't mind too much, but sometimes he got tired of them being there every weekend. While Diana was having a new experience, Jackson drove 2 hours to have dinner with their son on his college campus. Jackson wanted to tell his son about the divorce, man to man. Like his father, he calculated that his father had prevented future trouble by freeing his mother to find her new happiness. He knew his mother had a different opinion. The next day, Saturday, after lunch, Jackson went home with his son. He hoped that this visit would not affect the boy's grades this semester. Steph asked Diana after dinner about her night with her lover. Was everything as she thought? Dee said she was disappointed. After Candace's lustful tales and Steph's tales of her exciting life as a single woman, Dee thought she was going to have the best sex of her life, but was only disappointed. Steph insisted that she needed the right partner, and she had just such guys. There are 2 guys she's dating. Each of them knew about the other's existence, and Steph was confident that she could talk them into debauchery with them tonight. The 2 couples dined and danced before returning to Steph's apartment. Obviously, Steph chose one of the 2 men, but her other choice was more than happy to get Dee. They lounged on the sofa. He was a good kisser, and she responded to his touch. He pushed her back and pulled her panties down. Diane told him, no, but he ignored her. She was soon disappointed. Is this her future? Incomplete sex with men who seem to only want pleasure for themselves without regard for her pleasure. She wriggled out from under him, went to the bathroom, and began to shower. I just wanted to wash it off. She felt dirty. She had sex with 2 different men in 2 nights, both of which were disappointing. The warm water felt nice, and as she lathered up, a cool breeze told her that someone had entered the shower with her. He grabbed her breasts from behind. Hey, baby, I love sex in the shower. Do you like having sex in the shower? He pulled her towards him. Because he was bigger than her, she couldn't push him away. She reached behind the shower curtain, looking for something she could use to pull him away from her. Her fingers found a soap dish on the lip of the window sill. She grabbed it with her left hand and smashed it on his head. The soap dish shattered into dozens of small pieces. Stunned, he fell to the shower floor. Diana climbed over him and stood on the toilet seat, screaming for Steffa. While Diana stood on the toilet seat waiting to be rescued, Jackson was fast asleep on the couch. He's been sleeping there ever since he kicked Dee out. He could sleep in their bed, but he couldn't forget that she might have had other lovers in their bed. He woke up from a knock on the front door. He was wearing only boxers and a t-shirt, and hesitantly walked towards the door. If he had looked through the peephole, he would not have opened the door. When he opened it, there stood the queen of debauchery herself, Candace. Physically, Candace was a beauty. Petite woman with a sexy cheerleader body. Like Jackson, she owned her own business, a fitness center franchise where she personally trained overweight men and women. But Jackson always thought of her as a wormy apple that looked beautiful on the outside. But when you bit into it, it was rotten on the inside. It was already past 1 in the morning, and she was standing there in a little black dress. Jackson frowned. What do you want? She smiled her seductive smile that always worked. I thought you might need some good sex, and I'd be happy to help. She lightly ran her fingers over his face, across his chest, and down. Very good, Jax. It will be wonderful. Never in my life, Jackson said, removing her hand. Go home. It will not happen. She looked girlish. Come on. I heard that Dee and you are no longer together and this will be fun. Jackson pushed her back out of the doorway and closed the door in Candace's face. She smiled to herself as she walked back to her car. She liked it when a man played hard to get. On Sunday morning, Jackson did something he hadn't done in 20 years. He cleaned himself up and went to church. He was raised Baptist, but he wasn't sure he wanted to listen to a fire and brimstone preacher. There is a non-denominational church a few miles away. He arrived a few minutes before the service began and chose a seat a few rows back. He sat down in the middle of the row so that others wouldn't have to crawl over him to find a seat. The sermon was about allowing God to help you become the best person you can be so you can help others. Jackson felt touched and often felt like he wasn't doing enough for others. He is successful, but has never felt motivated to help others. Maybe he should become a mentor to young people and teach them to be successful. Lead by example, he thought. He felt very good until he returned home and saw Diana sitting on the steps. She jumped up and started screaming at him. "Where have you been?" I called. "I came to you and my keys don't work and the access code to the garage doesn't work either." He calmly replied, "If you really want to know, I went to church. And maybe instead of being whoring, you should find a church. I'm sure there are men in the church you can have sex with." She followed him inside after he unlocked the door. Dee wasted no time in starting to say that she wanted to go home, that she can't live with Steph, that her lifestyle is unproductive. "No, you can't live here. I freed you from the oath that you were going to break anyway, if you haven't already. By the way, what was the sex that you just had to have?" "I don't—" Dee didn't finish. She wanted to say I didn't like it, but Jackson finished for her. "Don't lie, I've known you for too long, and I can tell that you've had this since you left here. There is no turning back. You know how I felt." Dee's thoughts went back to last year when she told him she wanted to go to a bachelorette party with her friend. He bluntly stated that this would lead to her cheating on their marriage. It might be the first night or the 100th, but she'll do it eventually. She didn't want to admit he was right. He told her that it was wrong for married ladies to act like single. It would only lead to trouble, and these troubles could affect his business. His clients may find out that she is his wife and take their business elsewhere because she behaves badly. Dee tried to hug him, but he stopped her. "Tomorrow I'll ask Tracy, my new assistant, to make a list of safe apartments you can afford. I'll ask her to email them to your work email. From here you can pick up your bedroom furniture and everything else you want." She cried, saying, "I can't live on what I earn. You must help me." Jackson stood his ground. "You never needed to work. I earn a lot of money, but you wanted a job. You've saved $0, and you're blowing your paycheck as fast as you get it. You can't do this anymore. Being divorced, you will have to balance the budget. In addition, there are many families living on less than you earn." He walked her outside to the car. "You will be served on Wednesday at work, unless you want to go to Abe's office on Tuesday to be served quietly." On Wednesday at work, Dee received the documents, although she hoped that Jackson would not divorce her. She lived with him for more than 20 years and always got her way. Suddenly, she knew that the Jackson who loved you was different from the Jackson who decided not to love you. Alcohol was flowing freely at Cheryl's house on Wednesday night. The girls gathered together to cheer Dee up. Cheryl, Steph, and Dee were drinking too much too fast without food when Candace walked through the front door with a bottle of wine and a bottle of Jack Daniels. "I don't understand what kind of party this is." As they continued drinking and tongues loosened, Candace announced that she was going to seduce Jackson. The tipsy ladies burst into laughter. Cheryl suggested, "Girl, Bex was first." "Ha!" Candace said, standing up and running her hands over her toned body. "Does she really think her mommy body can compete with this?" Candace admitted that she tried to seduce Jackson, but he rebuffed her. "What are you thinking about, Dee? I think I could marry Jackson and never have to work again, have plenty of sex with him and live comfortably." She grinned. "Or maybe I'll marry him, live with him for a while, and then get divorced. You know I can't be faithful." For the first time, Diana began to realize what she had done. While Dee started drinking even more, Jackson opened the front door to reveal Bex and her children. She was holding a casserole dish in her hands. "Thought you might need a friend tonight." They ate on the terrace. After the meal, Bex and Jackson talked about how he felt about everything that had happened since he told Dee to leave. Her children played basketball in a basket in the backyard. "I'm sure you know the others are with her now, to help deal with the shock of today's service. And I would like to be with you. Thank you for your friendship." She didn't stay long. The children had school the next day. But before leaving, Bex kissed Jackson tenderly on the lips. He smiled as their lips parted, a seductive kiss that lasted just the right amount of time. Jackson woke up sometime between 1:30 and 2 a.m. It was a drunk call from Diane. She alternately cried and scolded him. How could he do this to her? Doesn't he love her enough? For him, this meant that it was Dee who didn't love him enough not to go to clubs and do God knows what while she was there. He would hang up and she would call back. After the third ring, he disconnected the call. We'll call her tomorrow when she sobers up. Jackson waited until 11 before calling her. She didn't apologize for the calls yesterday. He asked why she didn't call Tracy back about the apartment she found for Diane. She ignored this statement, but instead wanted to go home. No, I know that you had sex with other men, so our marriage is over. You couldn't even wait to be served before having fun. I hope you got everything you hoped for. A week, just a week. You couldn't wait to try other men. He heard a knock on the door and looked up to see Bex with a paper bag in her hands. He raised his hand. Hey, give me a second to end the call. Exhaling, he continued, Diana, you wanted other men, and I'm giving you the life of a single divorced woman, which is what you obviously want, so sign the papers. If you don't meet Tracy tomorrow, I'll sort out the apartment issue for you myself. I will pay the first 2 months of rent. That's all. I have to go. Bex just surprised me with lunch. He turned off the call. By 6 o'clock in the evening, Stephanie was tired of listening to Dee. Girl, you have to give it up. Bex isn't stealing your man. You don't want to hear it, but you were the one who wanted to try that guy, and you got him. What did Jackson get? He realized that he didn't have what his wife of 20-some years wanted. Sorry, sister, but no man would want that. The Jackson I know won't take you back. Dee didn't want to hear it at all. But you didn't try to stop me. Steph looked at her strangely. Why? When you want something, you go and get it. You've always been like this. Besides, I'm a slut, and I know it. You screwed up, and you want Jackson to pretend it never happened. You should be glad he doesn't know about the other things you did. Change into something slutty, and let's cheer you up. 2 weeks passed, and Dee had several new and disappointing lovers.